if you're waiting to feel confident before you take action, that's exactly why you feel stuck. You see, a few years ago, I was 120 pounds, right? Stick thin, insecure, hated my situation, and I just felt like I was invisible to everybody. You know, I didn't like who I was, I didn't have confidence, and I knew I had to do something about it and actually start taking the necessary steps into becoming the best version of myself because simply I was so fed up. And at that moment in time, I was like, I don't want to continue, living if this is who I'm going to be, if this is the body I'm going to be stuck in. So after months of procrastinating, not knowing what I was doing and just feeling sick of my situation, I started training at home because at the time I wasn't confident enough to go into the gym. I didn't know what I was doing and I just hated the idea of yet again feeling like I was new, feeling like I was stupid and looking ridiculous to everyone around me. And I started at home, right? I put in the time. I started with a couple workouts, some random workouts, non-structured, still, like I said, very new to the game, had no idea what I was doing. But as time progressed and I started understanding, how to do the basics, started doing some bodyweight exercises, started taking care of myself, training wise, right? Don't mind me. My everything else was terrible. My sleep was completely terrible. My nutrition, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just sort of going through the motions, but I had enough pain deep rooted inside of me to start taking action because I did not want to continue living how I was living in the body and physique I was living because I just felt like the odd one out. I felt like different. I felt never heard. I felt invisible, but I knew I was built for more. I knew I wasn't supposed to be that guy. I always knew that the reason I was that version of myself and the reason that I was so, in such a great deal of pain over my physique and my mindset is because I knew God had something so much greater in store when it came to actually building. He allowed me to build something great. He put that on my mind to start taking action because I hated that situation so much. He made it so easy for me to build up. He made it so easy for me to realize I had to make a change because of how much I hated my situation. And he gave me that urgency. But that honestly is like, I was stuck in that situation for a long time, just repeating, breaking my promises, going through the motions, telling myself, oh, I was going to do this. I was going to be this person. When this time comes, I'm going to wake up at this time. I'm going to do all these things. And every time I told myself I was going to do it, I told myself, not today, maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll do it, right? And I kept slipping back into my old ways. I kept being the same version of myself, making the same mistakes over and over again. But something I had to come to realize when it came to myself is that I'm in control. I'm in control. So I was doing with these home workouts. I was, on and off, inconsistent. And a couple years passed. I had some results, decent, okay results. I built a tiny bit of muscle mass from the bodyweight exercises and everything I was doing. And then one time I decided to step foot into the gym because I had a couple mates around me at the time who were doing the same thing. So I stepped foot into the gym, just bit the bullet, accepted that it was going to be something else I had to learn and something else I had to get good at. And, I enjoyed it. I honestly really enjoyed it. It was an escape for me to get away from just all the negativity I was constantly filling up my mind throughout the rest of the day. All of the negative emotions, the self-doubt, everything I thought of myself at the time that wasn't positive, I could just block all of that out when I went to the gym. Just focus on myself, focus on building my physique and chipping away at building a greater mindset. I did all those things. I stayed relatively consistent, right? On and off, but I still did, a couple workouts a week. That was more consistent than I was at the time. And fast forward 7 months, I gained 30 pounds, right? Of not knowing what I was doing, inconsistent workouts, a terrible diet, but just a desire to work hard, a desire to have results. And after 7 months, I gained 30 pounds. Keeping in mind, some of it was fat, right? Which is why I was able to gain that amount in such a pretty short period of time. It was not all lean muscle mass for sure. But I went from being skinny to then, having some muscle mass, but also being, sort of the heaviest I've ever been. And for many of you guys, you're not going to think that's heavy because I always come from I was always a very, very skinny person. So I had just put on a tiny bit more mass, right? Tiny bit more fat, nothing crazy. But I was also a very, very light guy growing up. So this was heavy for me and what I was used to. That being said, I managed to get to this point and I stayed consistent for another 7 months and I enjoyed it. I fell in love with self-improvement even further. I kept building, I kept developing, and I kept putting in the work and staying consistent. And I kept showing up for myself, and as time went on, I started building good habits as well. Because of all the work I was putting in the gym, I was like, okay, let's fix my diet. Let's do some more research about that. Let's start eating cleaner, because there's no point in staying consistent and doing everything I was doing and putting in the work, just training, still having bad sleep, still not having the best diet I could, because I was just wasting my potential, right? Wasting what I could essentially achieve in that time. And no one wants to feel like they're putting in more work than they should be and not seeing the results they should be as well. So I continued with that. I stayed consistent with that. I slowly built good habits over time, removed the old ones that were holding me back, like breaking promises and doing all these things. But I had that result, and I got to from where I was now. Don't get me wrong, I was so far from where I started, but so hundreds of miles from where I wanted to be. And I'm still not there yet. I'm still building and so far from where I want to be, but I've also grown quite a chunk as well. So I continued, I made good habits, I removed things one at a time, slowly. It was a slow process. I did it over a matter of months and years, right? I continued building, and I got to a point where I actually made significant progress. This is 7 months after the 7 months where I was clueless and started the gym. So I'd been in the gym for about a year and a half at this point. And I had seen, honestly, the best results I'd ever seen. At this point, I was fully into self-improvement, fully addicted to the process, just obsessed with doing everything I can to optimize everything and just become the best version of myself. But at the same time, I looked at myself in the mirror and I realized I haven't really changed in terms of my mental, in terms of my confidence, in terms of my self-image and how I perceived myself, because I was still breaking my promises. I still had bad habits, right? Nothing was perfect. I still had not the best diet. I was still making, some poor choices. And that made me realize is that becoming the man you want and actually gaining confidence doesn't come from the gym alone. Like, I used to think the gym would fix everything, and that is just not the case. What I came to realize is I became a better version of myself, and was more in tune with my body and my health. But that did not cure my confidence. That did not help my confidence and help me develop as a man, because what actually did was keeping my promises, actually showing up consistently, proving to myself that I am that version of myself that I say I am. Because you can do every workout in the world. You can eat as clean as you want. But if you're saying things that you're going to do and you don't stick to them and you just keep breaking your promises, it doesn't matter what you do. You're never going to get to where you want to be. You're going to continue breaking those promises, and you're never going to feel confident. You're never going to feel like the man you're supposed to be, and you're never going to see your full potential. And the reason I'm sharing this with you guys is because I know many of you are in the exact same position as I was. I was overthinking, I was researching, trying to learn, but I just felt just unsure and not ready to take action. I didn't feel convicted to take action. I felt like I wasn't ready. I didn't deserve anything that I was going after because of the lack of confidence I had, because of the things I thought I had placed upon me, and because of my terrible mindset. And I really honestly prayed on the gym fixing everything, but all it did is reveal how insecure I was, how I thought about myself, and everything that I needed to fix and everything that I wasn't. Because it teaches you a lot of things, the gym, and just getting in and prioritizing your health and fitness. Don't get me wrong, consistency, discipline, hard work, and loads of other things, right? But you never actually step out and keep your promises and become the best version of yourself until you keep your promises, until you actually take action, until you force yourself to step out of your comfort zone. Because I know so many people, it's the start of 2026. I know so many people this year have made New Year's resolutions and maybe used to get in shape. But let me be honest, only possibly about 2% of those people that make a New Year's resolution to get in shape, who actually waited until January 1st to start, are going to stick it through for a long enough period of time to see results. And you have to make those decisions for yourself consistently over time. Building your confidence is like building your physique, but you can't go to the gym and build your physique and expect confidence to come with it. Because the only way you build confidence, and I learned this the hard way, so you guys can skip this process and skip all the guesswork and feeling like you're not worthy of having the results you know you deserve, is that you just have to, yes, hit the gym. Yes, stay consistent and prioritize your health and fitness and go on walks and do all these things. But if you want to build your confidence, if you want to start taking action, if you want to change your energy and the way you view yourself, the way you carry yourself and your beliefs and your opinions and everything, you want that to hold more weight, you have to start showing up when you say you're going to show up. You have to do the things that you said you were going to do. And honestly, it holds so much weight, because every time you break a promise, you're just convincing yourself that you're not quite that guy yet. Even if it's something so small, you've still gone against what your initial will. You've still gone against what you know is best for you and what you should have done in that situation, because you picked that comfort zone, because you picked that side of comfort. And it's so difficult. And I know, honestly, people struggle with this more than others, because if you have such a strong purpose and such a strong urgency that you're going after and you're working towards, you're going to feel it on a much greater level, because you know exactly what you should be doing. You know there's no time to waste. You know you have a purpose and something you need to fulfill. So when you aren't taking action towards that, and when you aren't doing what you're supposed to do, then there's just a massive light shining on those areas that are imperfect. And then you realize what you actually should be doing. Everything becomes so much more clear. And yes, it's great, but at the same time, it makes you feel so insecure and so unconfident and so worthless until you keep those promises, until you actually level up and become the person that you know you can be. So honestly, my biggest advice for you guys is stop waiting for motivation. Start showing up for yourself. Start doing the things you need to do. No one cares how you look. I know you have this image in your mind about you look silly when you train hard. You look silly to everyone around you when you do the things that you know you're supposed to do. But not everyone's on the same path. Not everyone's convicted and has the urgency and has that thing that you have on your mind to start taking your health seriously. No one has that same wake-up call. But it's on your mind for a reason. So you have to use it. You have to take action. And you have to just full send. You have to forget what other people think, and you start keeping your promises. Start slow. Write things down. Journal. Get a whiteboard, whatever helps your mental clarity. That's why I just invested in a whiteboard, actually. So much mental clarity. I have my reason why, my morning routine, everything I want to achieve, and the baby steps and the small goals I want to do this year so I can get closer to that overall goal. Okay, but if you don't have any of that, if you don't write things down, you're going to continue breaking your promises. And I did for multiple years on end, and felt like I was progressing in every single way visually to other people, but I never progressed in myself. I never saw myself as the better version of me. I never saw my confidence improve. I never saw anything like that internal improve. And at the end of the day, confidence and everything we think about of ourselves massively impacts our decisions and how we're perceived to other people and what we do and how we keep our promises. So you want to get into that loop of making good decisions for yourself, and because arguably how you see yourself is just as important as your health and fitness and how other people see you on the outside. But the gym isn't going to fix it alone. That's the message. So if you're in this situation now where you're exactly like I was, where I was unsure, I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to make a change and I had to take the steps necessary to show up for myself, check the description below. If you want to apply for one-on-one coaching, we can go ahead and see if you're a good fit. There'll be a link to my Instagram where you can DM me the word change, and I'll ask you some questions, see if it makes sense, see if you're a good fit. And then there's also going to be a link down below where you can book a call with me if you want to figure out more information, if you want to, once again, take it straight to a call because you know you're ready to take action and you know you're ready to invest in yourself and do what's necessary to change and level up. Also, check out the description. There'll be a link where you can book a time that works for you. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys start taking action and actually do what's required to become the best version of yourself internally and grow your confidence and start keeping your promises, because it makes all the difference in the world. That being said, I see you guys in the next one.